Today I'm ranking the best decks in Temporal Forces standard format using the limitlesstcg.com points system. But first I'd like to share a few honorable mentions that didn't quite make the top 10, beginning with number 14, Espathra Xatu. Espathra EX Xatu has not been able to break past the top 32 ranking at a major event, but it kicked off this format with a top 32 placed by Braden Elfert at EUIC. Espathra EX is a grass type stage 1, and this grass type advantage is really strong in the current meta since Charizard EX is super popular and also very strong. With the help of weakness, Psyball can rack up some serious damage pretty quickly, and the Dazzling Gaze ability forces your opponent to have more energies attached and helps with the Psyball doing more damage. Xatu is sort of a makeshift energy acceleration and draw engine at the same time with its ability Clairvoyant Sense, although it doesn't do either of them at a spectacular rate. And finally, this deck uses both the Lost Origins Bennett with Puppet Offering, which can send itself to the Lost Zone and get you a supporter card from the discard pile, and Bennett EX, which has the Everlasting Darkness attack that can item lock the opponent, and Poltergeist, which can do a whole ton of damage based on the amount of trainer cards in your opponent's hand. This deck certainly falls into the lower tiers, but its great matchup against Charizard does keep it in the running for being a competitive deck. My second honorable mention is Snorlax Stall, which is ranked 12th on Limitless TCG. Snorlax Stall, much like Espathra EX, has failed to get past the top 32 placements at major events, unless you count Burt Walters' Pidgeot Snorlax deck, which got top 8 at EUIC, which I count more as a Pidgeot EX control deck. The highest placing Snorlax Stall was 27th, piloted by Patricia Walsh at the Sao Paulo Regionals, and we'll see a couple unique inclusions in this specific deck list, including 3 Crushing Hammer to have a chance at removing some energies, and also Regieleki with the Electromagnetic Sonar that can get back a trainer card each turn. Snorlax Stall has certainly become weaker in the format, especially with Prime Catcher being a popular card, which acts as both a switch and gust effect, as well as Charizard EX decks now commonly including at least one Professor Toro scenario, which used to be a rare Snorlax Stall tech, now is just a common include for the Charizard archetype. And my third and final honorable mention is Pidgeot Control, ranked 11th on limitlesstcg.com. Pidgeot Control was able to make it all the way to 3rd place at EUIC, piloted by Alessandro Cremascoli, and then its second best placement was top 32, 19th place, piloted by Guilherme Lessa at Sao Paulo Regionals. The top 4 EUIC list included a 1/1 line of Noivern EX, which uses the Covert Flight attack to lock out your opponent's basic Pokemon from damaging Noivern EX. So this can actually get auto wins against some decks like Ancient Box if they don't have a way to hit through this effect or go around the Noivern. Pidgeot EX Control aims to find a win condition against just about anything in the format and any situation it might come up against. Unlike Snorlax Stall, which aims to stall out your opponent until they deck out, Pidgeot EX Control often takes prize cards and will sometimes even win the game by taking all 6 prize cards. With the honorable mentions out of the way, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more Pokemon TCG content, and check out ways to support my content in the description down below, including affiliate links and coupon codes. Now moving on to the 10th best deck for the month of May 2024 is Roaring Moon Dudunsparce. Roaring Moon Dudunsparce was actually one of the honorable mentions last month here because players didn't quite believe in the deck's strength. But it's gotten multiple top 8s and a whole ton of placements, putting it here at number 10, including Cyrus McCain's top 8 at Orlando Regionals. This deck combines the efficient single prize attacking power of the new Roaring Moon with the one-hit knockout potential and tankiness of Roaring Moon EX. Instead of being backed by basic support Pokemon like Squawkabilly, Lumineon, and Mew EX, this version of Roaring Moon uses the new Dudunsparce with the Runaway Draw, which offers a single prize, very low liability option for drawing a lot of cards each turn potentially. The number 9 deck, believe it or not, was also an honorable mention in last month's video, and this is Gardevoir EX. Joshua Frink is currently holding the best placement with his third place finish at Orlando Regionals, with a version of the deck that was popularized by Fabian Pujol and Stefan Ivanov. Gardevoir EX lost a lot of its great cards to the rotation, so the deck definitely looks different compared to a couple of months ago. Now with its main attackers being Drifloon, Screamtail, Fluttermane, and sometimes even Mimikyu against decks that don't have a great answer to Mimikyu's Safeguard ability. The weakness of this deck is certainly its reliability on HP boosting tools to keep Pokemon like Drifloon and Screamtail alive past their typical HP threshold, so you can put more Psychic Embrace energies onto them, boosting Drifloon's Balloon Blast attack and Screamtail's Roaring Scream attack. Because these tools keep them alive, this means that you are at a disadvantage against any deck playing Lost Vacuum, which can just remove the tool at an instant and get a mid-turn knockout on your Drifloon or Screamtail potentially. Next at number 8 is another Roaring Moon based deck, but this is the Ancient Box variant, which includes the new Koraidon, the new Fluttermane, and also the new Great Tusk, as well as the Awakening Drum A-Spec, which really never had a chance to see any love elsewhere. So yeah, Awakening Drum making it into its namesake of the Ancient Box deck. This is a completely single prize variant using Roaring Moon as the main attacker. Koraidon can be an attacker with its Primordial Beating, but you'll see this deck only includes 1 Fighting Energy and 1 Fire Energy for using Primordial Beatdown or Shred when you really need it. But Roaring Moon's Vengeance Fletching is going to be the main attack of the deck, and that's going to be the attack you want to use 90%, maybe 95% of the time. However, let's not forget about Fluttermane with the Midnight Fluttering ability that shuts off the opponent's active Pokemon's abilities. This is especially very good against any deck using Comfey with Flower Selecting as the draw engine and Lost Zone engine of their deck, but it can also be good against pretty much any deck that has an important Pokemon with an ability in the active, like an Arceus Vstar or a Charmander or Charmeleon that then evolves into a Charizard EX. Won't be able to use their abilities because of the Midnight Fluttering, as long as you can keep your Fluttermane in the active position. Next at number 7 is Arceus Giratina. This is a deck that has been around for a while now. Arceus variant's even longer, but Arceus Giratina ever since Tina's release in Lost Origins. This deck's peak placement this format is 7th at the Sao Paulo Regionals, piloted by Lucas Mathias. And there's not too much to say about this archetype. It gained Eri, which is a great new supporter card that can discard up to 2 item cards from your opponent's deck. And this archetype has also gained Maximum Belt, although this specific list that we're looking at from top 8 at Sao Paulo Regionals chose to play Prime Catcher over Maximum Belt. The reason for this choice of a spec might just be that Prime Catcher is usable and functional in many more situations and against just about every deck, compared to Maximum Belt, which is only going to be usable in specific situations and against specific decks with high HP EX Pokemon. This is a similar idea of why Tord chose to play Prime Catcher in his Charizard EX deck, and why a large amount of the community, including myself, followed suit, replacing Maximum Belt with Prime Catcher. Arceus Giratina is a classic beatdown deck. You're going to go in with Trinity Nova, power up your Giratina, use Lost Impact for 280 damage, which is still a very strong amount of damage, and Iron Leaves with the Prism Edge to hit for weakness on Charizard EX. All the while, you have Bibarel's Industrious Incisors ability, backing the deck with a little bit of draw power every turn. Number 6 is Lost Zone Box, and Lost Zone Box actually came very close to defeating Charizard EX in the finals of the Sao Paulo Regionals, piloted by Nicolas Galaz, but Charizard EX was able to win yet another major event. Lost Zone Box continues to evolve with every set and with each meta shift, now including Hoopa EX, not only for Iron Hands EX on the other side of the board, but also for any sort of Arceus Vstar matchup, and includes several Paradox Pokemon, Roaring Moon EX, which is an Ancient type Pokemon, and Iron Hands EX and Iron Bundle, which are both future. The ace spec of choice here is Prime Catcher, and that makes perfect sense because gust effects are very strong. Lost Zone box decks need switching effects as well, which Prime Catcher is also doing, and it can be very awkward to find a turn to play Boss's Orders when you need to play Colress's Experiment to continue putting cards into the Lost Zone and digging through the deck. So Prime Catcher has made perfect sense in Lost Zone box as the ace spec. Overall, this is a very adaptable archetype, but can also be hindered by bad variants because of all of these single copy cards you see throughout of the deck, and even low count cards like 2 lightning energy, 3 water energy even can be a nuisance sometimes. If you've prized one and lost zoned one, your Moonlight Shuriken now becomes unusable. This deck can be very difficult and frustrating to play, but it is very rewarding. It is very versatile and adaptable, and it's a strong deck in the format, but not quite at the very top. Moving into our top 5, we've got Lugia Archeops as the 5th best deck. Although Lugia Archeops had over 20 placements in Day 2 of EUIC and over 20 placements in Day 2 of Orlando, its highest place finish so far has been 8th place at the Sao Paulo Regionals. Lugia is a pretty boring deck, and also pretty straightforward. Lugia Vstar puts 2 of your Archeopses onto the board, and then for the rest of the game you rely on Archeops' Primal Turbo to accelerate energy onto your board. The reason why Lugia is so strong in the Temporal Forces standard format is because of the newly released Giratina with the special roll attack that does a whopping 70 damage for each special energy card attached to Giratina. So with 5 energy cards attached, you're doing 350 damage, which one-shots everything in the game except for Pokemon with a Hero's Cape. Although this deck is incredibly strong with a single prize attacker that can knock out literally anything, Lugia Vstar does fall victim to being a clunky and inconsistent deck, somewhat more often than other top archetypes. Next at number 4 is Future Iron Hands EX with a peak placement of 2 top 8s at EUIC. We'll look at the 6th place list here, piloted by LAIC champion Yuho Kalama. Funny enough, Yuho did win LAIC with Miraidon EX Iron Hands, and this is kind of just the new format version of that deck. This archetype aims to use Miraidon's peak acceleration on turn 1 to do some chip damage, sometimes taking a KO on a smaller Pokemon, and of course powering up Iron Hands EXs on the bench. From there, you aim to take extra prize knockouts with Amp You Very Much, being boosted by Future Booster Energy Capsule, and also the new Iron Crown EX's Cobalt Command, which says that all of your future Pokemon do 20 more damage, and this can stack. So with 4 Iron Crown EXs on the bench, your future Pokemon are doing plus 80 damage, which means Amp You Very Much can get all the way up to 220 with 4 Iron Crowns and a Future Booster Energy Capsule. The main weakness of this deck is that it is very straightforward and very predictable. They're always going to lead off with Miraidon's peak acceleration, and then if you take a knockout on that, it activates their counter catchers and their deck actually gets stronger. So most of the time it's better to just gust around the Miraidon, or to just wait until you can gust around the Miraidon, or they willingly bring up an Iron Hands. Getting into the top 3, Lost Zone Giratina is no stranger to being in the top 3 of the standard format. Isaiah Bradner took a very unique version of Lost Zone Giratina all the way to 2nd place at EUIC. Isaiah's version of the deck included 2 Shuppet, 1 Bennett EX, and 1 Puppet Offering Bennett. The Bennett EX to help against the Chien Pao matchup, and the Puppet Offering just adding a little extra help at getting cards into the Lost Zone and getting back supporter cards. As predicted, this did not end up being the stereotypical version of Lost Zone Giratina. We'll see at Orlando Regionals, Brandon Dean placed top 8 with a more normalized build, except he did play Thornton and only 2 Giratina V. This was actually an idea for Lost Zone Giratina all the way back when Lost Origins came out, to use Thornton and a lower count of Giratina V in the deck, so you didn't have to bench 2 prizers all the time, and you could just Thornton it out and then immediately evolve. But this strategy was proven to be inconsistent and unreliable. However, Brandon was able to make it all the way to top 8 of the largest regionals ever with this version of the list. Number 2, runner-up for best deck in format for May 2024 is Chien Pao EX Baxcalibur. And here we're looking at the list of Reagan Retzloff, who placed top 4 at the Orlando Regionals, and the same 60 was played by Grant Shen, John Ang, and Lucas Zing to 18th, 25th, and respectively 48th place at the same regionals. Chien Pao EX Baxcalibur is one of the strongest decks if we're just talking in terms of raw potential and raw power level. When we start bringing consistency issues into it, it falls just short of where Charizard EX Pidgeot has been able to go. But Chien Pao EX Baxcalibur, very, very strong deck. You have the Shivery Chill to search water energies out of the deck. You have Baxcalibur's Super Cold to attach those energies. And then Chien Pao EX can do essentially unlimited damage with Hail Blade. But you also have backup attackers Radiant Greninja for its Moonlight Shuriken and Iron Hands for the Amp You Very Much attack. And finally, the number 1 deck is Charizard EX Pidgeot. Now, Charizard EX Pidgeot has won every major event in the TPCI area. It won EUIC, piloted by Tord Reklev. It won Orlando Regionals, piloted by Liam Halliburton. It won Perth Regionals, piloted by Kaiwan Kababe. And it won the Sao Paulo Regionals, piloted by Pedro Pertusi. We're actually going to look at my 5th place list from Orlando Regionals, where I made top 8, with a list that is not too far off of Tord's 60 card list that he won EUIC with, but I cut a couple of cards I felt were unnecessary and added some cards like Charmeleon and second TM Devo that help. And I haven't done a deck profile of this deck on the channel, so I figured now's a good time to talk about it. I think this is a very, very solid 60 card list, and I'd be comfortable taking this to a major event again. I also want to highlight the differences in Pedro Pertusi's first place list from Sao Paulo Regionals. He also adapted the 1/1 Bibarel line that Tord played and the Cleffa as well, but chose to go with Hero's Cape as the ace spec, also playing Eri and double TM Devo. And a Mist Energy, which is also a card not included in every Charizard EX. Charizard EX Pidgeot is just so strong because you have Charizard EX with really high HP, it accelerates energy to itself, it does a whole lot of damage, it gets better as the game goes on, and then Pidgeot EX can search your deck for any card you need every turn. So it's just a deck of some of the most powerful cards possibly ever printed, and certainly printed in this format, and when combined they are a very powerful, very consistent pool of cards that make up the Charizard EX Pidgeot archetype, and that's why it is the best deck in format. I hope you enjoyed today's video ranking the top 10 decks plus a few honorable mentions. Let me know if we missed any decks. Remember, this is not my opinion except for the honorable mentions. This is all based on the LimitlessTCG.com point system. So let me know if I got the honorable mentions wrong, if Limitless's point system got the whole top 10 wrong. What do you think in the comments down below? Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time here on Celio's Network.